When I first moved into the house on Briar Hollow Road, I thought the worst thing about it would be the silence. The real estate agent had called it peaceful. She said it with a tight smile, as if she didn't quite believe her own words. The house stood at the end of a narrow gravel drive in northern Vermont, wrapped in tall pine trees that blocked out most of the sunlight. Even in the afternoon, shadows clung to its gray wooden siding like damp fingerprints. I was desperate at the time. New job, low savings, and a need to get out of my old apartment fast. The rent was cheap, suspiciously cheap, but I signed the papers anyway. The first night, the silence felt thick and heavy. No traffic, no distant music, just the faint whisper of wind brushing through trees and the occasional creak of old wood adjusting to the cold. I remember lying in bed and thinking, this is good. This is calm. I didn't know then that the house wasn't silent at all. It was listening. The first strange thing happened 3 days after I moved in. I was unpacking boxes in the living room when I noticed something odd about the far wall, the one behind the old stone fireplace. The previous owner had painted it an uneven shade of cream. At first glance, it looked normal. But as the afternoon light slanted across it, I saw small, round shapes beneath the paint. Dozens of them, slight bulges, about the size of golf balls, scattered irregularly across the surface. I stepped closer. They weren't nails. They weren't patches. They looked almost organic. I laughed nervously at myself. Old houses settle, I muttered. Paint bubbles. But as I leaned in, I could have sworn one of them shifted. Just slightly. I froze. The room was still. The air felt colder against my skin. I reached out and pressed my finger against one of the bulges. It was firm. Too firm to be trapped air. And warm. I jerked my hand back as if I'd touched a hot stove. My heart pounded loudly in my ears. I stared at the wall, waiting for something else to happen. Nothing did. You're tired, I whispered. That's all. That night, I dreamed of eyes. Hundreds of them, pressed against thin, translucent skin, blinking in the dark. The scratching started a week later. It was subtle at first, just a faint scraping sound behind the fireplace wall. I assumed it was mice. Vermont woods were full of them. I even bought traps and set them in the basement. The traps stayed empty, but the scratching grew louder. It didn't sound like claws anymore. It sounded deliberate, slow, careful, like fingernails. One evening, as I sat on the couch scrolling through my phone, I heard it clearly for the first time. Scratch, pause, scratch, scratch. I turned my head toward the wall. The bulges seemed more pronounced now. The paint stretched thinner over them, like skin pulled too tight. Hello, I called out before I could stop myself. Silence. Then, a soft thud from inside the wall. My chest tightened. I stood up slowly and approached the fireplace. The scratching resumed, this time directly at eye level. Scratch, scratch. Something tapped from within. 3 sharp knocks. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the coffee table. This isn't real, I whispered. But it was. Because then the paint split. Just a tiny crack at first, running over one of the round bulges. The fissure widened slowly, flaking outward. And through the opening, I saw an eye. Blue, bloodshot, unblinking. It stared directly at me. I couldn't move. My body refused to respond. The eye twitched, rolled slightly in its socket, then focused sharply on me. A wet sound followed, like lips peeling apart. The crack widened. Another eye appeared beside the first. Then another. The wall rippled as if something enormous shifted behind it. I screamed and bolted from the house, not even bothering to grab my coat. I didn't go back that night. I drove to a motel 20 miles away and tried to convince myself I'd had some kind of breakdown. Stress, lack of sleep, hallucinations. But when I checked my phone the next morning, there was a notification from my security camera app. Motion detected in living room. My hands trembled as I opened the footage. The camera faced the fireplace wall. At 2:17 a.m., the wall began to move. Not subtly, not like settling wood. It bulged outward dramatically, stretching and pulsing like a living thing. The paint cracked in multiple places. Pale shapes pushed against it from inside. Eyes. Dozens of them. They blinked in unison. And then, slowly, they turned toward the camera. The feed cut out. I returned to the house in daylight, telling myself I needed rational proof. The wall looked normal again. The paint was smooth, no cracks, no bulges. I replayed the footage over and over, comparing it to the wall in front of me. They didn't match. I stepped closer. "Okay," I said aloud, trying to steady my breathing. "If you're real, show me." Nothing happened. I felt ridiculous. I turned to leave, and caught movement in the corner of my eye. One small bulge near the baseboard. It pulsed. Just once. My stomach dropped. "I'm not crazy," I whispered. A faint outline formed beneath the paint, like an eye pressing outward carefully. It didn't break through this time. It just watched. That night, the dreams returned. But they were different. I wasn't outside the wall anymore. I was inside it, cramped, suffocating, my back pressed against rough wooden beams. Something cold and damp surrounded me. And in front of me, hundreds of eyes. They weren't attached to faces. They grew directly from the wooden interior like mushrooms from a tree trunk. They stared at me hungrily. A voice echoed in the darkness. "We see you." I woke up choking. There was dirt under my fingernails. Over the next few days, things escalated. The scratching turned into whispering. Soft, layered voices, overlapping each other. At first, I couldn't make out words. Then I began to hear my name. Daniel, drawn out, mocking. I stopped sleeping in the bedroom and started crashing on the couch, keeping the lights on. The wall began to change again. This time, it didn't hide. The bulges multiplied, spreading across the entire surface. The paint grew thin and translucent, revealing vague shapes beneath. Eyes, noses, lips, faces forming inside the structure. They didn't break through completely. They just pressed close enough to be seen. Watching, always watching. One afternoon, there was a knock at my door. I nearly jumped out of my skin. A woman stood on the porch. She looked to be in her late 60s, gray hair tied back tightly, sharp eyes scanning me. "You moved into the hollow house," she said flatly. It wasn't a question. "Yes," I replied cautiously. She nodded once. "It started already, hasn't it?" A chill ran down my spine. "What are you talking about?" Her gaze drifted past me into the living room. "The walls." I didn't respond. She sighed. "It doesn't like to be alone." My mouth went dry. "What doesn't?" "The house." The whispering began again behind me. Faint, restless. The woman's expression darkened. "You need to leave." "I tried," I said. "It followed me. In my dreams." She looked at me with something almost like pity. "It doesn't just watch," she said softly. "It learns." The wall behind me thudded violently. The woman's eyes widened. "You don't have much time." Before I could ask what she meant, the front door slammed shut on its own, nearly hitting her. I spun around. The fireplace wall was splitting open again. Cracks spider webbed across the surface. Paint peeled away in strips, revealing raw wood. Underneath, wood that looked disturbingly like flesh. Eyes burst through, blinking rapidly. Mouths followed. Dozens of them. They stretched wide, teeth forming where there had been none before. The whispers rose into a unified chant. "Stay." The woman pounded on the door from outside. "Don't let it take you." The floor beneath me shifted. Boards lifted slightly, as if the entire structure were breathing. A long, pale arm forced its way through the wall, splintering wood as it reached toward me. It wasn't attached to a body. It simply extended from darkness. Its fingers brushed my wrist. Ice shot through my veins. In that instant, I saw something, felt something. A memory that wasn't mine. People trapped inside the walls. Not dead, not alive, preserved, watching, waiting. The hand tightened its grip. And from within the torn wall, one massive eye opened wider than the rest. It wasn't blue. It wasn't human. It was black. And it was smiling. Not just cold. Dead cold. The kind that seeps into bone and settles there. I tried to pull away, but its grip tightened, fingers digging into my skin with unnatural strength. The massive black eye embedded in the torn wall widened further, its surface glossy and wet. I could see my reflection inside it, small, terrified, already half consumed. "Let go," I screamed. The whispers surged into laughter. The pale arm jerked hard, dragging me forward. My feet scraped uselessly against the wooden floor as splinters flew. The wall yawned open wider, stretching like elastic flesh. Inside wasn't insulation or brick. It was darkness, breathing darkness. I caught a glimpse of faces within it, faces I'd seen pressing through the paint. Their mouths opened and closed silently, as if screaming underwater. The old woman's voice shouted from outside. "Fight it. Don't look into the eye." Too late. The black eye locked onto mine. And everything went silent. I wasn't in the living room anymore. I stood in a narrow wooden corridor, barely wide enough to move. The walls were slick and pulsing faintly, like the inside of a throat. Dim light flickered from no visible source. Rows of eyes lined the passage. They blinked slowly as I turned. "You shouldn't have come." Dozens of voices whispered at once. "I didn't," I croaked. "You pulled me." A ripple passed through the corridor, almost amused. "You live here now." Cold panic crawled up my spine. This isn't real. It is real enough. A shape formed ahead of me in the darkness. At first, it was only a shadow. Then it thickened, rising tall and thin. Limbs stretched too long. Its surface looked like splintered wood and pale skin fused together. Where its face should have been, only one enormous black eye. It leaned closer. "You see us," it said. "So you belong to us." Suddenly, the corridor contracted. The walls squeezed inward, pressing against my shoulders, my ribs. The eyes moved closer, blinking inches from my face. "No," I shoved against the slick surface. "Let me out." The creature tilted its head. "You will watch." The walls split open. Behind them, I saw other corridors. Other trapped figures. People. A teenage boy pounding against wood that wouldn't break. An elderly man curled in a corner, whispering to himself. A woman clawing at her own face, trying to tear her eyes out. "They tried to leave," the creature murmured. "But they looked." I squeezed my eyes shut. The whispering grew angry. "You cannot unsee." Pain exploded in my wrist. I gasped. And I was back in my living room. The hand still gripped me, halfway through the wall. The massive eye glared, irritated. "Daniel!" The old woman screamed from outside. "Break its focus." My gaze darted around wildly. The fireplace poker lay near my feet. With a desperate lunge, I grabbed it and swung blindly at the eye. The metal rod connected with a sickening, wet crack. The black eye shrieked. Not a human sound. A tearing, splintering howl that rattled every window in the house. The grip on my wrist loosened just enough. I yanked backward with all my strength and fell hard onto the floor as the pale arm recoiled into the wall. The cracks sealed instantly. The paint smoothed. Silence fell. The front door flew open. The old woman rushed inside, slamming it shut behind her. She stared at me, breathing hard. "You heard it." My wrist throbbed where fingers had pressed into my skin. Dark bruises were already forming in the shape of a hand. "What is it?" I demanded hoarsely. She looked toward the fireplace wall with deep hatred. "It's a collector." "Of what?" "Witnesses." We sat at the kitchen table. I could still feel the house vibrating faintly beneath us, like it was restless. "It was built in 1891, she began quietly. "By a man named Elias Hollow. He was different, obsessed with observation. He believed the soul lived in the eyes." I swallowed. "He started experimenting. Animals at first, then travelers, drifters, anyone who wouldn't be missed." The floor creaked. "He carved out spaces inside the walls. Claimed he could preserve consciousness. Keep people watching forever." My stomach twisted. "That's impossible." "He disappeared one winter. House stood empty for years. But people who moved in after, they didn't last." "And you know this how?" I asked. Her face hardened. "My brother moved in here in 1987. The air felt heavier. He said the walls had eyes," she whispered. "We thought he was sick. Paranoid. Then he vanished." A faint scratching began again behind the fireplace. Slow. Deliberate. "He's still here," she said. "I've heard him." The whispering resumed, faint but rising. "Daniel." The old woman stood abruptly. "You can't stay. It's stronger now. You damaged it. What happens if I leave?" She looked at my wrist. "It's already marked you. That night, we tried to burn it. She brought gasoline." I soaked the fireplace wall while the whispers turned frantic. "You cannot destroy us." The eyes began forming again beneath the paint, dozens of them pressing outward in panic. I struck a match. For a split second, everything was still. Then I dropped it. Flames roared upward, devouring the wall in seconds. Heat blasted across the room. Smoke filled my lungs. The house screamed, not metaphorically, It screamed. The walls split open from floor to ceiling, revealing layers of writhing faces. Arms burst through the wood, grasping wildly. The fire didn't consume them. It fed them. The black eye reformed in the center of the blaze, larger than before. "You tried to blind us," it hissed. The flames twisted inward, sucked into the eye like breath. Then darkness exploded outward. The old woman was thrown across the room. I hit the floor hard, ears ringing. When I looked up, the fire was gone. The wall stood untouched. Perfect. The old woman lay unconscious near the doorway. The black eye stared at me from beneath the paint. Unblinking. Stronger. "You cannot leave," it said softly inside my mind. "You are part of us." My wrist burned. I looked down. An eye was forming beneath my skin. It blinked. I screamed and clawed at it, but it sank deeper into my flesh, settling just below the surface. "I see," it whispered through my own voice. The wall responded instantly, bulging, swelling in excitement. The house wasn't just watching me anymore. It was watching through me. The old woman groaned, slowly regaining consciousness. Her eyes widened when she saw my wrist. "Oh no," she whispered. "It's inside you now." The whispering rose into a deafening chorus. "Stay." The floorboards began to open. Not breaking. Opening. Like mouths. And from every surface, walls, ceiling, even the floor, eyes emerged, all of them turning toward me. Hungry. The black eye in the fireplace stretched wide in triumph. "You will watch with us," it said. The house inhaled. And this time, it didn't reach for me. It waited. Because it didn't have to pull me inside anymore. I was already becoming part of the wall. The whispering never stopped. It had become constant, a low hum beneath my skin. Every step I took, every blink, every breath, carried the chorus of eyes within me. My wrist pulsed with their presence, the single eye beneath my skin growing sharper, more aware. I could feel it moving, stretching tiny nerves into my hand, my arm, my chest, weaving into my very bones. I tried to scream, but my voice came out layered with others, a chorus of trapped souls I had glimpsed in the walls. Their memories merged with mine, their fears mixing with mine. I was no longer entirely myself. The house had grown restless. The old woman, my only ally, stood frozen in the doorway, eyes wide, clutching a silver pendant that glowed faintly in her trembling hands. "You can't fight it now," she whispered. "It doesn't need to pull you in. You are inside it." I turned toward her, but my vision was strange, fractured. Eyes blinked from every surface, reflecting in my own, doubling infinitely. I realized I could see through the walls. I could see the hidden chambers, the tiny corridors stuffed with bodies pressed behind plaster, behind paint. Their faces moved slightly, mouths opening and closing in silent pleas. I can see them," I whispered. "Yes," the woman said. "You can see what they saw. What you will become." I shook my head. My fingers clawed at my wrist, at the growing eye. Pain shot through me like lightning. Then came the sensation of falling. Not down. Inside. Inside the wall, into the endless network of corridors. The black eye in the fireplace, no, the entity itself, moved toward me. It no longer needed the wood to reach me. It had learned to project, to dominate. The air thickened around me as hundreds of its lesser eyes pulsed in rhythm. "You tried to destroy us," it whispered inside my mind, a voice that wasn't mine, but also mine. "Now you belong." I tried to resist, to fight, but every struggle made it worse. Each heartbeat synchronized with the eye beneath my skin. I could feel its intent, its hunger. And in that instant, I understood. It didn't want to kill. It wanted to share, to merge. I stumbled through a shifting corridor, the walls pressing in, guiding me like a river's current. Faces pressed closer, mouths opening in silent screams. They weren't angry. They weren't sad. They were waiting, watching, knowing. Then I saw it. Elias Hollow. Not a man, not entirely. Just an eye, dozens of eyes stacked in a terrible tower where a face might have been. His hand reached out, pale and splintered, inviting me forward. "You see now," he said. "All who came before, all who stayed. We are many. You are many. Join us, Daniel. Watch, learn, never leave." My instinct screamed no, but my body didn't obey. The eye beneath my skin pulsed violently, spreading through my arm, my chest. I felt the walls of my consciousness split, opening channels into the house itself. I screamed, or maybe hundreds of us screamed. I could no longer tell. And then, silence. I woke on the living room floor. Morning sunlight slanted through the windows. For a moment, everything seemed normal. The old woman had disappeared. The house was quiet. The walls were still. But when I looked at my wrist, the eye was gone. I breathed, relief washing over me. Maybe it was over. Maybe it hadn't claimed me entirely. Maybe I was safe. Then I glanced at the fireplace. The paint rippled. A bulge grew slowly across the surface. And I saw it. Hundreds of tiny eyes, blinking, focusing on me. I backed away. The whispers returned, faint at first, then rising in a chorus. "Watch, Daniel, watch," and I realized, horrifyingly, that no matter where I ran, I could never leave. Because now, I am part of the wall, and the wall watches.